My sister said, if you won't babysit 5 kids, don't come. Our parents sided with her. He replied, then my $18,000 wasn't invited to Christmas either. I cancelled all the travel plans with my sister's family. My phone exploded. The city below my apartment window was slowly being draped in a blanket of fresh snow, each flake catching the faint glow of the late afternoon sun, and inside, the warm scent of pine from my small tree mingled with the rich aroma of cinnamon from a steaming mug of tea. For me, Alex, Christmas had always represented a sacred pause, a temporary ceasefire in the relentless hustle of my life as a financial advisor where spreadsheets and projections gave way to the simple, unquantifiable joy of family. This year, that feeling was amplified by a secret I carried close to my heart, a surprise nurtured over months of meticulous planning. He had secretly booked a full, all-expenses-paid vacation to Hawaii for my entire family, a lavish, week-long retreat in a luxury oceanfront villa, with first-class flights for everyone. The total cost, a substantial $18,000, was already processed, the digital confirmation sitting in my inbox like promises of imminent happiness. He envisioned my sister Clara's 5 children shrieking with delight in the surf, my parents finally unwinding without a care, and the stunned, tearful gratitude that would surely follow my announcement on Christmas morning. It was to be my grand gesture, a tangible bridge across the quiet distance that had grown between my world of quiet ambition and their world of chaotic, child-filled demands. He believed this gift would finally solidify my place not just as a successful sister and daughter, but as a cherished and integral part of the family fabric. As I looked out at the peaceful, snowy scene, I clung to this perfect vision, completely unaware that the foundation of it all was already cracking, and that a single, forthcoming phone call would shatter the illusion, forcing me to defend the boundaries of my own worth. The pony's shrill ring cut through the peaceful ambience of my apartment, a stark, digital intrusion on the quiet winter evening. Seeing Clara's name flash on the screen, I answered with a genuine smile, my secret about the Hawaiian vacation making me feel warm and generous. Hey, Clara. I was just thinking about Christmas, I began, but her voice, though layered with a familiar, sisterly tone, carried a steely undercurrent that immediately put me on guard. Alex, the kids are so excited to see their favorite aunt, she said, the words feeling less like a greeting and more like a preamble. But listen, we need to get something straight right now. The shift was jarring. She explained that Mark's company party on Christmas Eve was a monumental deal for his career, a can't miss event. Then came the core of the call, the demand wrapped in familial expectation. We need you to watch all 5 kids for the entire evening. It's non-negotiable. My mind reeled. Babysit 5 children under 10, single-handedly, on the very night meant for family connection? That wasn't an invitation, it was an assignment. But before I could voice my protest, she delivered the ultimatum that would irrevocably change the trajectory of our holiday, her words cold and absolute, so, if you won't babysit the 5 kids, then don't even bother coming. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the crumbling of my Christmas expectations. He was too stunned to speak, the image of the Hawaiian villa and their joyful faces being violently replaced by the stark reality of their conditional welcome. And then, the betrayal deepened. A click on the line signaled a new presence. Honey, are you there? It was Mamoter's voice, seamlessly joining the ambush. Clara told you about the party. You understand, don't you? They really need this. Mafater's gruff voice, a definitive gavel, chimed in next. Don't be selfish, Alex. It's one night. Jure family, you help. The word selfish from Mafater's lips landed not as a simple admonishment but as a final, definitive judgment, a verdict that cemented my place in the family hierarchy. A cold clarity began to cut through the initial shock and heat of my anger, a survival instinct honed by years of navigating high-stakes financial negotiations where emotion was a liability. I could feel the weight of the Hawaiian vacation confirmations in my inbox, a stark, digital counterpoint to their blatant manipulation. My Moter's pleas and Mafater's gruff dismissal were not about family unity, they were about compliance, about enforcing a status quo where my resources, both temporal and financial, were considered communal property to be allocated by them, while my own desires and boundaries were deemed irrelevant. The image they held of me, the perpetually available, accommodating sister, was a caricature that no longer fit, if it ever truly had. I took a slow, deliberate breath, consciously lowering my heart rate, pushing the rocket down into a place where it couldn't dictate my words. He would not give them the emotional reaction they expected, the tears or frustrated shouts that would allow them to dismiss me as hysterical and unreasonable. Instead, I let the silence on the line stretch, forcing them to sit in the awkwardness they had created. When I finally spoke, my voice was unnervingly calm, a flat, professional tone I usually reserved for contentious client calls. I see, I stated, the words deliberate and measured. So, my presence at our family Christmas is conditional on my providing a specific, unpaid service. I understand your position completely. I was reframing their emotional ultimatum into a simple transactional statement, stripping it of its familial camouflage. Don't be dramatic, my father snapped back, a classic tactic to deflect from the core issue, but I was already moving forward, the logic of my next sentence forming with an icy, inevitable precision. The silence on the phone was profound, broken only by my mother's sharp, startled gasp. What does that mean? Clara asked, her voice now a nervous tremor, the demanding confidence utterly gone. It means the vacation fund I was going to announce, a paid-in full week in Hawaii for your entire family this spring, is cancelled, I stated, my voice flat and factual. I've just revoked the transfer and cancelled all the travel plans I made for you. He ended the call without another word, my hand steady now, the initial adrenaline replaced by a cold, firm resolve. He immediately opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. He navigated to the airline and hotel websites, pulling up every confirmation email. I took systematic screenshots of the first-class flight reservations, the luxurious oceanfront villa booking, and the receipt for the full $18,000 payment. This was my hedge against the deeper plans I knew would come. I was documenting everything. Then, methodically, I began the cancellation process. With each click of the confirm cancellation button, I felt not guilt, but a strange sense of liberation. He was no longer playing by their manipulative rules. The deed was done, and the digital paper trail was my shield. The reaction was as immediate as it was predictable. Within minutes, my phone began to vibrate incessantly, skittering across the kitchen counter like an angry insect. A barrage of text messages from Clara illuminated the screen. You can't be serious, followed quickly by, we were counting on that, and then, the guilt trip, you're ruining Christmas for your own nieces and nephews. How could you? Then the calls started, first from my mother, then my father, their names flashing with a persistent, accusing rhythm. He let them all go to voicemail. He would not be drawn into a screaming match where my emotions could be used as weapons against me. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop labeled Christmas Ultimatum and began meticulously saving everything. He screenshot every angry text, logged every missed call with timestamps, and saved the voicemails where my mother sobbed about family and my father accused me of spite. He knew from painful experience that in family wars, the first casualty is often the truth, and I would not let my emotional responses be twisted to paint me as the hysterical, unreasonable one. I had the proof, the cold, hard data. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah Jenkins. He laid out the situation calmly and showed her my digital dossier. You were smart to document this, she said, reviewing the screenshots of the ultimatum and the cancellations. Families can get ugly, and manipulation often turns into legal threats, false claims of promises made, even defamation. This record protects you. It establishes the sequence of events and their conditional ultimatum clearly. She advised me on my rights and what specific steps to take if they escalated further, reinforcing that I had taken the correct, preemptive steps to hedge against legal missteps. This wasn't about paranoia, it was about preparedness. Leaving her office, I felt a layer of anxiety lift. He was no longer just a daughter and sister navigating a personal conflict, I was a client with a strategy and legal backing. The emotional game they were playing now had a concrete, legal counterweight. The emotional onslaught intensified, becoming a sustained campaign. My parents showed up unannounced at my apartment, their faces masks of hurt and manufactured confusion. How could you do this to us? To your sister, my mother cried the moment I opened the door. He invited them in, remained physically calm, and did the one thing they least expected, I presented the facts. I opened my laptop and showed them Clara's initial text chain outlining the babysitting demand, the call logs proving their coordinated intervention, and my calm, written reply reiterating the logic of my decision. This isn't about being selfish, I explained, my voice even and firm. This is about boundaries. You and Clara established a clear price for my attendance. He simply decided not to pay it, and in turn, withdrew a separate financial gift. They were flustered, confronted not with the tears and drama they could dismiss, but with irrefutable evidence of their own complicity. They left quieter than they arrived, the wind taken out of their sails by the shield of documentation. Clara, realizing her direct tactics weren't working, shifted strategy and tried to rally the extended family against me. She painted a picture for aunts, uncles, and cousins of a cruel, wealthy sister who had heartlessly stolen a dream vacation from 5 innocent children. But I was prepared for this, though. I sent a concise, factual email to a few key, sensible relatives, my pragmatic uncle, my perceptive grandmother. He attached the same documentation and stated my case without melodrama. I had been issued an unfair, transactional ultimatum and had responded in kind. He did not attack Clara, I simply presented the timeline. Some relatives were inevitably swayed by the emotional narrative of crying children, but others saw the stark reality of the situation. Their support, though quiet and conveyed in hushed phone calls or brief texts, became a fortress, validating my stance and protecting my credibility against the smear campaign. In a moment of quiet doubt, late one evening, I double-checked my own assumptions. Was I being too harsh? I, in my rigid adherence to logic, misinterpreted my dad's often gruff but potentially well-meaning advice? He thought deeply about what he truly valued, not just a superficial family harmony, but underlying fairness and honesty. By trying to force me into a corner with an ultimatum, they had been deeply unfair. By standing my ground with documented logic instead of hysterical accusations, I was being honest. My reflection only solidified my resolve. I had not missed the truth of the situation. I also accepted, with a sobering clarity, that this rift would not heal quickly. Family conflicts are glacial in their pace. He set a realistic internal timeline, acknowledging that this Christmas and possibly the next would be quiet and strained. I threw myself into my work and personal projects, building a life that was fulfilling independent of their approval. This patience was my essential hedge against the frustration of what I knew would be a slow, judicial-paced process of reconciliation. After a week of tense silence, Clara requested a meeting. He agreed, but on my terms, a neutral public place, a busy coffee shop. He brought a printed copy of the key documents. She looked tired. Why did you really have to cancel the trip? Was it just to punish us? She asked, her voice weary. I slid the paper across the table, my finger pointing to her own words. If you won't babysit, don't come. You made my presence conditional on providing a service, I said quietly, without malice. That felt transactional. So I withdrew my transactional gift. It was a direct consequence, not an impulsive punishment. My money was an extension of my presence, and you uninvited both. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine understanding in her eyes, followed by a dawning shame. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first crack in her defensive narrative, a crucial step forced by my unwavering adherence to the facts. My parents, seeking a final resolution to the chaos they helped create, called for a formal family meeting. I attended, listening silently as they spoke in circles about hurt feelings, disappointment, and the unspoken rules of family. When it was my turn, I avoided casting blame and stuck firmly to my principles. I want a relationship with all of you based on mutual respect, not conditions and coercion, I stated, looking at each of them in turn. My love and my presence aren't commodities that need to be earned through unpaid labor or financial gifts. Until we can all agree on that fundamental respect, this is where we are. The standoff that followed was quiet but absolute. There were no more shouts, just the heavy weight of a new, uncomfortable truth settling in the room. They had no counter-argument that didn't sound entitled, and my calm logic left no room for their emotional manipulations. Christmas Day arrived. My apartment was silent save for the gentle hum of the heater. There was no chaotic gift-giving, no noisy dinner, no cries of children. The peace was palpable, though tinged with a certain loneliness I had to acknowledge. That morning, I processed the final step of my decision. I officially donated the $18,000 to a charity that supported low-income families, an organization that provided housing and resources. The confirmation email brought me a profound sense of peace and closure. The money would now do unambiguous good, its impact clear and without the tangled, toxic strings of familial obligation. It was a definitive end to that chapter, a reclamation of my generosity on my own terms. The gesture was for me, a symbol that my resources were mine to direct with intention. In the weeks that followed, a slow, cautious thaw began. The calls from my parents became less accusatory and more conversational, tentatively asking about my work or my life, carefully avoiding the landmines of the recent past. Clara sent a brief, awkward text, an apology that, while not perfect, contained the crucial admission, the ultimatum was wrong. I'm sorry for that. It was a start. The road to rebuilding trust would be long, and the family dynamics were forever shifted, the old hierarchy disrupted. He understood that our interactions would now exist in the shadow of this boundary, a line they now knew I would fiercely defend. This was the new, more honest foundation we would have to build upon. Months later, on a bright spring day that would have been our week in Hawaii, I reflected on the entire ordeal. I had learned that the most important hedge against manipulation isn't just a clever financial instrument or a comprehensive legal document, though those are vital, practical tools. It is the unwavering commitment to your own integrity, the courage to stand by logic in a storm of manufactured emotion, and the quiet strength to know your own worth. The cost had been high, a fractured holiday and strained relationships, but the return on investment was my self-respect. He had proven to myself that I could navigate the most emotionally charged of conflicts with the same principled strategy one applied to my professional life. A year later, our family gathering was different, quieter. The old, assumed dynamics were gone, replaced by a cautious, more genuine politeness. He was no longer the first person called for a favor, but I was also no longer taken for granted. We were, for the first time, relating to each other as adults with autonomy. The ghost of the cancelled Hawaii trip lingered, not as a source of conflict, but as a silent, understood reference point for the new boundaries that now defined us. The peace we had found was fragile and earned, not the false harmony of suppressed resentment. I had given myself the gift of integrity, and in doing so, had inadvertently offered my family the possibility of a more honest, if less convenient, relationship. The hedging was complete. Sometimes, the real victory is not letting yourself lose, even if the other person wins with a lie. If you've ever felt something like this, please let me know in the comments. I read every comment. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Don't forget to share it with someone close to you, they might need to hear it too. And if you want to hear more such real stories, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.